Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Austin Software Cooperatives. Today we're talking about rugged coalitionism, uh, and Watson's wrote another great white paper. I'm just now finishing it myself. We've had several conversations throughout the weeks, and so I'm looking forward to. I think this is going to be another great talk, guys. So without any further ado, let's kick it off.
All right, thanks. Rugged coalitionalism is a play on rugged individualism, which is kind of a pull yourself up with your own bootstraps ideology that Herbert Hoover used to say. The whole idea behind rugged individualism was to try to capture inefficiencies and to avoid some type of central planning, top-down planning. Within the cooperative space, we wrestle with how we coordinate. And there's different ways to be a cooperative. There's different ways to do organization. We have papers. Just look at the /about for the Austin Software Cooperative meetup group to see everything that we've written on it so far. What this is going to be about is it's going to try to give advice to individuals, whether they're within a cooperative or not, and it tries to show them how to coordinate without a central planner. So it's all about being organic, right? So it's not really this rugged individualism, because as we're going to see, rugged individualism has some flaws. So we've got the Hayek quote here on the top, and he is the enemy of all central planning. He's the ultimate free market guy. He actually is not laissez-faire. Most people think he's just brutally free market all the way down, but he does have some provisions. But really, his view is it's premised on competition. So if you can make something if you can organize a structure that has a better competition and it has a hierarchy, he's for it. And so that's why he's that's why he's okay with hierarchies that are corporate and private, but not so much hierarchies that are state. In order to, my argument is that collectivism is collectivism. There is, and this is an opponent, that he's an opponent of collectivism. He's an opponent of people getting together and doing some type of central planning, right? But there's two types of collectivism. There's horizontal, right? So that would be a bunch of people getting together. Some people would characterize a cooperative as a horizontal collective, like a bunch of farmers getting together and saying, okay, we're going to sell some things, we're going to buy some things. And kind of socialism, we kind of look at that as a horizontal collective, but it really, when there's any type of hierarchy, that's when there's a vertical collective, right? And so a corporation is a vertical collective, right? And so is a government hierarchy, right? So vertical collective, so you can take basically just about whatever arguments you want to take against collectivism and apply them to a large corporation as well, with all the bureaucracy that's within a large corporation, multiple products, services being sold, different incentives, people being pulled in different ways. And this is kind of the reason why Hayek is against big government setting prices, right? A central planner. He wants to say that that's inefficient. So it's all about efficiency. Well, if you've been employed at a large organization, you can see the inefficiency at large corporations as well. Just basically my argument is that any large group is going to have some type of bureaucracy, inefficiencies, or whatever. And so it's kind of they're kind of special pleading, I think, Hayek is. But I'm using some of where he wants to go and say, okay, we're going to try to have efficiencies without a central planner. Because individuals who aren't a part of a cooperative, or individuals who are within a cooperative, a large one, small one, whatever, you have to figure out some way to coordinate. And why, if you don't need someone telling you what to do, then why have one? Why, if you can have autonomy, if there's a way to do it? All right, so we've talked about collectivism, and then I'm gonna go a little bit into career capital. So when people think about how they are supposed to move forward on their careers, there's a bunch of ways to do that. One way is to just follow your passions, and that's kind of fallen out of favor in some circles, because you can follow your passion and no one wants to buy your passion, you know. But so you can, if you're fine with that, if you're fine with being poor, then that's okay. But there's a little conundrum there where you can say, I want to have a job that does XYZ, and no one wants to pay for that. So really, you have to have some type of compromise. And there's a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You, where Cal Newport does some surveys. He's not a social scientist or anything, but he does some surveys and comes to the conclusion that you can have mastery and autonomy and all the things that people, you know, over and above pay, that people want, without having passion for what they do. You can do something that matters and not really have a joy or passion while you're doing it. And so it's kind of a pathway to get to to your dream job or what have you. If you move down a certain direction where you're basically going to be a little bit more disciplined. Obviously, when you get right out of school, nobody thinks, you know, you don't have a strong, what we're going to get into later, a signal that tells people that you're competent and all these other things. And so what he suggests is you go ahead and build on your career capital, maybe at a regular job or what have you, working on different things. Deliberate practice is a big thing that he says. And then you go ahead and move towards the direction that you think would interest you. So I have some other things that I personally find to be big issues for people who are trying to coordinate with others, trying to move forward on their career. One thing that we always discuss is the whole problem of being a generalist versus specialist. Within software, we have a history of becoming more and more generalist, and then we contract and become more of a specialist again. Like we oscillate back and forth. It used to be in 1993. You had to know about networking. You had to put in your own networking card. You had to do your own support. Your users were going to call you directly. So you probably had to know how to write a database, a balance tree. You probably didn't have access to one. You may not have had access to one. All kinds of things that were all what you could call like maybe vertically integrated or something. And then it got all split apart, and you became a Java programmer. And then it started getting worse, or started integrating again. You had to know a little bit about caching servers, the back end. You had to be very strong. And then it started being, oh, you need to be better at user experience and all this stuff. And you got to be good at front end. You got to know, and you have to know multiple languages. You have to know JavaScript, and then it's separated again. Okay, so now you got user experience specialists. You've got front end engineers who all they know, they know JavaScript and they know all the latest controls, but they don't know the back end. And the back end people are good at performance and all stuff. So there's all this oscillation, generalists versus specialists. And it's tough for a new person and for anyone to even give advice on this type of thing. Is pretty tough. But within macroeconomics, large businesses, they have this problem. And it's a problem of vertical integration or horizontal integration. So if you can imagine a shoemaker, they have, metal, laces, cotton, leather, and they're combining it all to make a shoe. So all of those inputs, that's all getting integrated on one level. Now you could look at it and say, when you start looking at it this way, the word generalist and specialist doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just how much you've integrated. So you got that shoemaker, that's somebody on the horizontal level. Well, on the vertical level, the shoemaker says, hey, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and have my own farm with cows. I'm going to go ahead and get my own leather or whatever. Well, he just went ahead and integrated vertically upstream, right, and pulled some things down. So the whole game is like, when should you generalize and when should you vertically and horizontally integrate? And that goes into economies of scales and scope. But all that means is there's a pathway there that you can look at for business. You can apply that to yourself for your own services. And it comes down to, what will people buy? And it comes down to this. If you think of a ear, nose, and throat specialist, doctor, and you think of a generalist, general practitioner in small towns, they dominate. The ear, nose, and throat doctor doesn't dominate. They don't have enough market. So it's really the market that decides how much of a generalist versus specialist and how much vertical and horizontal integration you're going to do. And all that's important for deciding your direction for your career and your professional side. And then, moving forward, I'm going to talk a little bit about being or conducting yourself as a professional service firm. Tom Peters is probably the best or most well-known or most influential living management consultant since Peter Drucker died. And he has lots to say about how you should conduct yourself at work. He's very influential as far as predicting lots of things that happen and behavior that happened. For instance, Amazon, AWS, like somebody, if you were to go back in 1999 or 2002 and say, hey, in the future, people are just going to go ahead and sell their internal servers. People would say, yeah, that's crazy, right? But he was saying back then, you should sell your services, maybe 15% of your services, no matter what you do. If you're an accountant, right? Doesn't matter, outside of your corporation. Individually, you should treat yourself as a services and treat a firm and treat everybody like a customer. And then there's all these effects that happen. One of the things it does for Amazon is everybody QAs their stuff, right? So that's one benefit that they get. Now, being a professional services firm, they have a bunch of problems that you have as an individual when you think about your skill set. And you have to make some decisions. If you don't make these decisions, then you're going to end up basically being a generalist without having the right reasons behind it. You're also going to have a hard time with how you pay yourself and all these other things. And I recommend the book Professional Services Firm to read a little bit more about that. But basically, you've got three types of of ways you can go as a professional services firm. You can become a research person, and the type of work you're going to go after is going to be more in the research, like it's a brand new issue, a brand new problem, and you're going to give a brand new solution for that problem. Then there's the experienced or gray hair project type, and that is going to be the type of problem where it exists. People have done it before. Hopefully you've done it before. And then that type of customer, you can capture that type of customer. You can procure them, or they can procure you, because you have that experience. And then you got procedural, which is basically you do it better, faster, cheaper kind of thing, more efficient than another person. They don't have enough time to do it. So when you make those decisions, then you can say, oh, I'm good at these types of things, whether it's research experience or whatever. And you can start building your signal towards that. And those types of customers you'll be able to capture. And if you don't do that, then you just confuse your customers, and they won't know what to pay you, because your signal isn't that of a researcher or experienced or procedural. You'll just say, pay me. And they'll say, why? I don't know why I should pay you what an experienced person gets paid, or what a research type person gets paid, or a procedural person gets paid, right? So you need to have that in mind when you're making your decisions about your career. And then as far as the types of customers, you probably have seen, if you're not familiar, the adoption phases that customers go through. There's a book on The Innovator's Dilemma. It's a really good book that talks about disruptive technology. They popularized the word disruptive. But the innovators and early adopters, they're people who are tolerant towards disruptive technology, or disruptive brand new things that are kind of going to be the next new hot thing, hopefully, and it's going to kill everything else. Those types of people, they'll pay you to do that type of work, and that type of work is very like problematic. They'll have issues. It'll break. So it might seem like it's not worth the money that you're charging people for, but they're very tolerant. And then you've got early majority who expect more quality. They're less tolerant of problems, but they are, but they're going to probably be the ones that, if you're getting into a career in the beginning, they're going to be able to only serve probably the early majorities, like the people who are going to be more tolerant of problems. But you just have to keep that in mind with the types of decisions that you're going to make. And I'm going to talk about in the next section about the commitments you're going to make, about the types of skill sets that you're going to go after, right? So the main thing for identifying the types of customers on adoption, it's going to be the split. They call it the chasm between the early adopters and the early majority. The early adopters are tolerant, and the early majority are not as tolerant. So you want to get all the good opinion and all the stuff about your services or product, whatever you're making on that first side. Those types of customers, you're going after them. You're building a certain kind of signal after those types of people, and it's a totally different type of signal for the rest. Okay, so that's a decision that you have to make. If you don't make, then again, you have confusion in your customers and within yourself, and you're kind of not really, no one knows how to coordinate with you. And that's the main point we're talking about today. Now, for development commitments, this is skewed towards software, but I believe you could apply it to other services or even products. There's really 4 things that I've outlined here for you to make a decision on, and these are going to be the ways that you coordinate, and which I'm going to get into a little bit later, with everyone else with your peers and people within your community, and so on and so forth. So we've got craftsmanship, and that's really within software. It's just your technology. So let's just say React.js or JavaScript or something like that. Your craftsmanship is going to be it's kind of, you can almost look at it like a, you know, how good you are as a metal worker or woodworker or something like that. An example of like building on your craftsmanship is to say, oh, I'm going to concentrate on React. I'm going to learn React.js this year or something like that. And your signaling is going to reflect that. You're going to blog about that. You're going to do training about that. You're going to try to build your signal as well as your skill set, both, right? Make sure did I go over signal? Yeah. Non-functional requirements. These are things that are applied across the board. For software, there's a link. I think I put a link in here for non-functional requirements. If not, I'll add it. But there are things like security, availability, reliability, those types of things. I would think that other products have something similar that go across the board, and different customers will desire different non-functional requirements, right? Everybody's going to say, I want this, but certain, you know, customers are going to have a certain pain. And if your specialty in the non-functional requirement lines up with their pain, then you're going to have a strong signal with that customer. So for example, you could choose security, and then you could do a deep dive on security for a year and really be good at authorization, authentication, the different types, different holes, those types of things. Or you can specialize in performance and just have and blog about and create signal about all the different performance issues that your customers have or that you have or what have you. And maybe develop some software that goes along that to showcase your skills, those types of things. Right? Now, horizontal market. So within software, you got horizontal application software, stuff like consumer security software, CRM, ERP software, accounting software, those types of things. Those are things that span industries, right? So you could say, I'm going to work on just CRM software, right? I'm going to work on getting good with Salesforce, let's say. When you concentrate on that, the types of customers that need that type of software, anyone else that doesn't have that, a blog about those types of things, they're not going to be able to compete with you. But that's not really what we really want to showcase or demonstrate, is that other people will be able to coordinate with you. Maybe, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but you'll be able to say, okay, I know how to do Salesforce. Someone else is good on availability or security. When you guys get together, you can capture a certain kind of work. And then we've got vertical markets, which are a specific industry. So you could, you know, this one is actually, both of the horizontal and vertical are, you know, all of these are really important. But with the vertical market, is really going to get you familiar with a customer's real problems, their real pain. So the types of, let's say, within insurance software, you know, everybody wants to do, all these insurance companies, mom and pop ones or whatever, they want to have insurance software. But the binding portion, that very last stage where people actually sign up, and it's you know, binding between the insurance company and their customer, that portion is the tricky part, right? And so being able to talk about that, or being familiar with that type of issue, which you can read about in books, you can blog about, whatever, you are now familiar with a actual real business problem, right? And so you can address that problem. You go into a community, you can talk with them or what have you, and they're able to identify you. When you don't do that, then again, you're not able to compete with anybody who can do that. But also, other people aren't able to coordinate with you. It's just a big nebulous, I do everything or I do nothing or whatever type of problem. So we have that. So now, what does it say? The first two are really about your professional communities like craftsmanship and non-functional requirements, or your personal communities. You're going to conferences and you're able to, within the first 5 minutes, your goal is going to be able to help somebody, give some advice or what have you within the first 5 minutes. So if you've been working, blogging and doing all this stuff on React.js, you should be able to have a conversation about React.js and be able to help someone solve someone's problem or what have you within a few minutes, right? If they haven't been focusing on that. Same thing with the non-functional. You should be able to talk about availability or what have you, and your goal is to signal that you have some type of competency. Remember, career capital, these types of things. You have some type of competency. You can help someone. You're focused on their problem within 5 minutes. Same thing with horizontal markets and vertical markets, but those are external to you. Those aren't your professional communities. Those are your customers, right? And so those are going to be your trade shows and all that stuff that are going to be more industry related. So like going to the massive Salesforce conference in the Bay, or some type of insurance trade show, and being able to have a conversation and help people is your goal. You're building your signaling and all that stuff, right? So you need all of that stuff. You need all of those, the development commitments, the kinds of where your customers are at, and those skill sets. You need all of that in order to be able to do what we're wanting to do, which is coordinate without some top-down person saying, hey, lowly developer, I think you should spend the next year learning C, right? And now you're relying on a central authority to plan your training and to plan your abilities. Now we have another paper that talks about exploitation in education. People have incentive to make sure that you're not that valuable, that your skill set is only enough to keep you in that job that you're having. So you don't want to do that. You want to do what we're talking about here, right? So now, central planning, where this is going to be a little bit complicated, but there are examples. I recommend the book, The Evolution of Cooperation. There are examples of within biology and just within humans and all over the place of cooperation without any central planner, right? So it's kind of, that just seems, if it's the first time ever hearing about that, it just seems impossible. How could that possibly happen? Well, within the evolution of cooperation, Robert Axelrod talks about any different types of behaviors within organisms and humans, really, that emerge without communicating beforehand, right? So that's the goal. No central planner, and you can't. It's even worse than no central planner. You can't even communicate, right? You just have to behave in a certain way, and another person sees how you behave and they respond, and then you kind of figure it out. Your behavior might be your communication, right? And so he gives an example of tit for tat strategy. There are other strategies where people can all coordinate. Some things without a central planner. Some of the interesting properties that are out there for non-centrally planned behaviors like this. There are certain behaviors that are what's called evolutionarily stable, which means that if a significant amount of people behave that way, then you can't have any invaders. And what that means is it's resistant to other people being completely hostile and coming in. They can't swindle their way in and betray people and get more than what they're worth, right? So tit for tat, it's somewhat behaves just like the intuition tat is. Basically, if someone does something bad, You do something, if they, what's called defecting, if they do something wrong, you immediately have to defect. You have to punish them and say, well, you're not doing it, I'm not doing it. But you start out always doing something right. And if they do something wrong, you do something wrong. But there's one catch, is that you have to have a certain amount of forgiveness in there. So you don't just forever do what's called defecting. When you're trying to work with other people, you have to have a certain amount of mixed in of for what's called forgiveness, right? But you can't just be non-responsive to provocation, which is them defecting. You have to be firm and say no. If you're trying to be what's called like a free rider, if you're trying to take some resources, you're trying to do something, we're not going to let you take the resources. You take the resources, we'll take it, or whatever it is that's what's defective. And then you behave that way, and it ends up being that what emerges is a bunch of people behaving that way and everyone cooperating with no central planner. Okay, so now that's one hard concept from game theory. There's another concept, which is a focal point. The way that I normally explain focal points is through the game of high-low, where basically you have two people, and you just say, okay, you have two options, high or low. And, person A is thinking of one of those words, high or low, and person B has to just guess what it is. And if the person B guesses the same thing as person A, they both win $1 million, let's say. If they don't have the same answer, then neither of them wins anything. And then when they study this, everybody picks high, right? Most people pick high and they win, right? It's just, there's a feature of that concept that's what a focal point is, and that Thomas Schelling got the Nobel Memorial Prize for his work on talking about focal points or Schelling points. Another one that he likes to use is if you take 12 people and say, hey, we're going to go ahead and meet somewhere in New York, but you can't talk to each other, and you can't tell each other obviously where to meet up. But where would you meet? And everyone ends up saying Grand Central Station, because there's just features about it that people that are familiar with New York, they just all decide to. If you can't communicate, you just go there. So that's kind of like a waypoint, or what's really a focal point. So if you combine tit for tat and focal points, and then you combine all the work we were talking about before, as far as saying, okay, here's my signaling, here's what I'm going to concentrate on. I'm going to make these commitments, right? I'm going to say, hey, for the next year, I'm going to work on security. I'm going to work on React.js. I'm going to work on, availability. I'm going to concentrate on Bitcoin. I'm going to concentrate, as a vertical and horizontal. I'm going to concentrate on, authorization software or something like that. If I do all of those things as an individual, and I make this commitment, maybe make it a public commitment in an Excel spreadsheet, and you can't change it, those types of things. And I have commitments to say, do 15 blogs on all of the assortment of those things over the next year. And other people can see what I'm doing, right? And if they have commitments and I see their commitments, I can say, oh, well, you're concentrated on Bitcoin, I'm concentrated on Bitcoin. What can we do there? Or you're concentrating on highly available things, I'm concentrating on Bitcoin, right? There's synergy there, right? And you can find these synergies, JavaScript, all the different things that can match up from all four of those, and you don't need a central planner in order to capture work and build signals. And you can also coordinate on jointly building signals. So what about somebody that is really good at, say, DevOps, and another person is really good at Bitcoin, right? Well, those two people get together and write a blog on the DevOps for Bitcoin using BitHost.io or something like that. And they write their blog. It's two for the price of one. You know, people hate blogging and writing. Now you're able to put something together where, you know, you both are increased your signal, right? So that kind of thing. So you can reduce the cost of building signal because you can coordinate. You also are able to have a stronger signal for your customers when you go after them. So you can handle all the procurement issues and all that stuff when they're trying to deal with, hey, is this person competent? Are we going to throw $100,000 at this person and is going to run away with the money or whatever? You know, they're worried about, you know, your strong signal is also what keeps them having a job as well, some purchasing agent somewhere. So all of that stuff allows you to behave together in such a way to where you can build, you can have a career direction, you can coordinate, build coalitions with people. The coalitions don't have to be persistent forever. They can come together, go apart, separate, and you won't have to like have a whole bunch of strings attached, and so you can have a lot of efficiencies there. So in closing, the coalition, and which we call the rugged coalition, is, you know, again, is a play on the rugged individualism. A bunch of people together that come together as needed without a central planner, and they're really focused on building their signal and behaving in such a way to where they're very efficient. They're capturing work with customers and all these things like that. You know, it's not anarchy, which is, you know, absolute no rule of law, because you have to have some strategy, right? You have to have some type of method to the madness, right? So what this really is a response to hierarchy. It's a response to, okay, I worked as the drone, I'm, you know, preparing the TPS reports like on Office Space, I'm doing all this type of stuff, and I'm having somebody who doesn't have my best interests in mind determine what type of training I'm supposed to go to, setting my prices. I have somebody else who has no interest in me telling me how much I'm worth, right? Really, I need to be out on the market figuring out how much I'm worth. Well, all of this stuff allows you to maximize all of that and coordinate with your peers. So that's all I have. You guys have any questions?
I've got lots of thoughts.
Go ahead.
How do you usually format the discussion part, or like, how do you normally do this? What is your usual protocol?
We just go.
Okay. And then wherever it goes is fine?
Yeah. I mean, if I would have known you had a bunch, I might have just stopped during.
Yeah, I guess that was another thing I wasn't sure about. Like, I feel like breaking this up in sections and having like a mini discussion after each section would be like, make the thing a little more productive in terms of thought. Like, I had a lot of thoughts on various parts, and then when you went on, then I'm like, oh, now I have more thoughts, and now my brain is exploding.
Yeah.
So since I'm new here, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on me and why I'm here and what I'm hoping to get out of being here. So I am a No Fluff tour speaker, if you're familiar with the group No Fluff Just Stuff. I'm working on pioneering the next generation of emotional intelligence AI. And I'm basically working on this effort that I've been working on for a few years now of open mastery, which was this vision I had of, oh, we can like optimize for joy and make mastery level education free to the world. And then it enables this like utopian vision. And I've been working on all my research is in measuring the pain in software development and using that as a data-driven feedback loop to improve. And so I started with this flow data science that was sort of the strategy to rage against the machine that is, you know, the business world, because I'm like, this is ridiculous, this sucks. And so I was trying to solve that problem. And then when I had all this pain data and I'd been studying brains, because through all the mentorship stuff, I started like putting together a model of how my own brain works, like in code. And then I started working with a bunch of like AI researchy people, and we ended up getting the blueprints together for like how to do the AI. And so I've got that all like in development. We'll probably have a prototype in like 3 months of the core architecture. And then we've also got this, like just applying the same principles of optimized flow at the human systems architecture level. We came up with a set of metaphors that is fairly close to the stuff in here. I'd say the biggest difference is on the career thing, like our stuff is very much that the key to making the market work is ultimately to optimize for joy. And I have very little experience in the type of literature that y'all are reading, and so I would love for, I mean, if you're interested in potentially helping with, I'm like one of those people that's brain is like exploding, but I have like awful execution skills, and and so like trying to like get this effort going. I've been working on it for like a year and a half. I'm now to the point where I've got 60 companies signed up for our initial tools that we're building, and we're bootstrapping without VC. It's a C Corp run with an open governance system. So, and we're maintaining ownership of everything. And then we didn't make it a nonprofit just so we could avoid the ridiculous nonprofit laws, because it doesn't allow you to do this. And then we're basically gonna invent a new currency that's metaphorically mapped to acts of love. And then sweat equity contributed to the system in terms of loving inwardly on it. We're basically going to give people purples for doing contributing to community projects, and then have an internal Kickstarter board, if you will. And then basically everyone in the community will start working together and building tools together and posting things on the Kickstarter board that everybody wants to build. And then all the money that we're getting from selling all the tools we're building, we'll invest all of it back into the community. And then we'll have a purples to dollars conversion rate on the Kickstarter board that, depending on how much money we're making, we're just going to adjust the rate. And then people can make up their own projects on whatever they think is awesome to work on. And since the people in the community are engineers, are also the customers and can also build stuff, all of those metaphors that you started talking about in here, like all seem to align and become like the customers become the community, become your employees, and like the system collapses. And I find it so beautiful that we're like building a singularity brain on top of like this organization, and the whole thing is like designed to optimize for flow. And we're planning on doing it by reinventing a new cryptocurrency. And since we can kind of break all the rules with regards to partnership, we're gonna basically bootstrap without VC and give community control away.
I hear you. All right.
So I'm like super crazy, ambitious type that's like running around doing rally cry speeches and you know, trying to get this effort going. And like all this wisdom you just spouted out here, all these books and stuff, I'm like, man, this is like a whole nother world that I've never been a part of. And I find I'm excited to be here.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you. I don't know what to pull from that as far as some of the questions here, other than the way that you're doing your community and your bootstrapping using cryptocurrencies and stuff. Yeah, it lends itself well to, you know, non-hierarchical environments, right? So that's kind of something that we are passionate about, or we talk a lot about. So just being organic for everything. Yeah, and a lot of what I've taken on upon myself is to familiarize myself with more of the like traditional economic arguments against organic structures and stuff like that, because kind of, you know, the people that are, like, to put it bluntly, like the people that are the hippies, they're easily sold on work on cooperatives and no hierarchies and all that. They love that stuff. I'm more, so they're already sold. I kind of am passionate about finding and talking about cooperatives and really organic and decentralized structures with people who are more traditionally, you know, like free market, but strong hierarchy in a corporation. You need to have strong leadership, top down, smart persons on the top, dumb people on the bottom. Those are the types of people that I'm normally writing for or trying to address, and because they think that none of the stuff works. So, so that's really where a lot of the, for me, where a lot of the stuff comes from. Also, some of this stuff is just internal reasoning about how we're going to move forward for the next year, you know, what we're going to do and all these types of things. So we put it out there and say, you know, if we talk about something 50 times, and I know me and Taylor, we've talked about journalist versus specialist for 5 years now or something like that.
So what is your objective with this group? Like, what are you trying to accomplish?
The group, it started out as saying, if we're gonna argue, if we're gonna argue about something, we're gonna go ahead and have a meetup group about it, and we're gonna be formal about it, and we're gonna write about it, and then say, here are our issues. And so cooperatives in general, right, showing people that, hey, you can basically, what I say is, you can work like a law firm. You know, you got partners, and it's flat. It's flatter than a normal entity, right? You got partners, non-partners, whatever, right? But you only got like 2 levels, 3 levels, something like that. You don't have like 10 levels, 20 levels like Apple, right? And it's really promoting that type of mentality and popularizing it, talking about like, this works, hey, this works, that type of thing.
Also, the I'm sorry, yeah, Janelle, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know if you so all of us here right now, myself, Josh, Watson, Taylor, and Lucina, we're all in we're part of a cooperative, and so the name is Volk, where we design software, and so yeah, a lot of this is exactly what he said. I don't know if he forgot to say that part, if he said, or if that was said earlier. But so every month we meet, we're discussing. Those are the problems that we're discussing ourselves, you know, and just on how best to solve the cooperative problem, you know, and just get it right. Yeah.
I'm checking it out.
Volk.coop. COOP.
Yeah. If any of you guys have any questions,
I'm really curious. Like, I'd like to know more about Volk, and like, if you can pull some examples specific to that context, is it something you can talk about, or?
Sure. I probably stop the broadcast here and we can talk.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
All right, here we go.